Hello, my name is Henry Villagomez, excuse me, and I am a Villagomez.
So, when and where were you born?
I was born here in Houston, September 17th of 43.
And how did your parents choose your name? Do you know?
Yes, I do. My actual birth certificate and baptismal, I'm Enrique Villagomez. And my mother's favorite cousin growing up was Enrique. So she named me after mi tío Enrique.
And so your nickname is Henry.
Yes, it's, when you go to school, they anglicize your name, and I've been a Henry all my life. But I do know that my birth certificate is Enrique.
So tell me about your parents. What are their names and what did they do for a living?
My father's name is Aurelio. He came originally with Mika Selly and my grandfather, Don Ramon. They came to Houston to work in the industries here. And my father spent many years, I think it was 19 years, working at the cotton compress here on the ship channel. And several other industries that were here. And actually, that's what drew the family here, was the industry and the job opportunities. When my father was young in Mexico growing up, he came over at the age of 18. But when he was young, he was apprenticed to a leather worker. And that was supposed to be his trade, making shoes, boots, saddles, anything that had to do with leather. When he got here, the circumstances were he ended up working in industry. But during the hard years, he still remembered his skills, and he started making shoes for his children, particularly the boys that I know. And then he would repair shoes. And then he did it for other members of the family and then for friends, and he started expanding. So eventually, I don't know the exact reasons, he left his work and opened up a shoe shop, and he became a shoe repairman or shoe manufacturer, whatever you call it. Spent his last, 20 years doing that.
And your mother?
My mother came along. When they came, the story I understand is they were dating, if you can say that, back in that area. They may have called it something else. And he wanted to bring her, and my grandmother told him, no, you can't bring your girlfriend with you. So they had to get married. And they were married on the eve of their departure. So they went to the cathedral, quickly arranged the marriage, and she came over. Then they worked in East Texas for a while at a city named Saratoga. Yeah, Saratoga. They were in the lumber industry, and my mother would help make lunches and just to provide. When they ended up here in Houston and they began to have a family, my mother was a stay-at-home mom throughout her life.
And do you know anything about your grandparents?
My grandparents, only through stories. I met my grandfather. I just have very few memories of him, Don Ramon. Mama Fina, I knew her pretty well. We would go to their home and visit. We were living very close, a few blocks apart. So we would see them. I would see my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather died. I can barely remember him, but my grandmother lived several years later, so I do remember her better. But I was born pretty late in life, so they were quite older than I was.
So you were born in Houston.
Yes.
And grew up here. Can you describe your childhood home?
My what?
The home that you grew up in.
Yes, well, we all grew up very close together. My Uncle August and his family, they were just a few blocks away. So we'd see each other all the time. When I came along, I was way less. I went to public school most of my older brothers and sisters and Mika Augustin's family, I think they went to Catholic school. So I didn't see them in school. I knew who they were, but it was different schools. So we'll just see them. Generally, as Mika Augustin was having his family and my dad was having his, they were pretty closely paired in age, like his oldest children. So I was closer to probably Danny Villagomez and Mercy. I think I'm very close in age with Mercy, and Pita was younger. So those are the three that I would see mostly. Mm-hmm.
And what house did you grow up in? Where was this? What neighborhood was it?
It was in Magnolia Park. It's actually, I was born in the house to a midwife, and it is where Days of Allah School is now. Do you know where Days of Allah is? Okay. We had to relocate. They moved the house so they could expand Days of Allah. Days of Allah was already there, but it was a small school. And in order to expand Days of Allah, they bought out that street and the houses on it. And I remember they actually, lifted the house and trailered it over just across the street. So I grew up across the street from Days of Allah. And I guess I was about 7 or 8 or maybe less. But I do remember them moving the house.
Tell me more about it. Was a wooden house?
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, it's a one-story wooden house. And they bought a lot. The lots there were very narrow. So at that time, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was living with us. So my father had a small house built in the back to care for her. She had been injured and she lived with us, but she had her own house in the back. So when she died, they fixed it up and rented it out. And then they built another little house in the back and bought a lot next to it and rented that out. So they would supplement their income with two, actually in the end 3 little rental houses. My brother-in-law, Gregory Garcia, was a carpenter and electrician, and he did all, and he built the garage and a little house above the garage, which they rented out. So they ended up with 2 rent houses.
So they were, would you say they were very, sounds like business savvy, or they were always trying to make...
Well, not really. It just started out more as a benevolent venture to take care of my grandmother, and then some of the other family members, when they got married, they lived there. My brother lived there, my sister lived there for a while. Toward the end, when they were all gone, they did rent it, and it did supplement their income, because all they had was Social Security then. So that and the 2 little rent houses, which they kept. But they weren't like a planned out business venture. It more evolved after the children moved away.
Tell me about your childhood. Did you have chores that you had to do?
Oh yes, just about all the Villagomez boys, including some of my Uncle August, will work at the shoe shop with my dad. And they learned the skills. And of course, my dad was very enthusiastic about teaching them the craft. My mother was adamantly opposed. No children of hers are going to be shoemakers. They're going to do something better. So I think he accepted that, but he liked having us work there. So my brothers and I, we would work after school at the shoe shop. That was pretty much our after-school job. We'd rotate who would work that day and on Saturdays and clean up. So,
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I missed on certain things, but I've always enjoyed my father's company. He was a very happy, well-read person, and I enjoyed conversations with him. He was very worldly for a person that only had a 2nd or 3rd grade. He read well, and he could quote. He read He said my father never spoke English. Now that's different from my uncle August and my Aunt Mary, who spoke perfectly. They spoke English perfectly well. My father never did. And he wouldn't, and neither would my mother. But I do know that in the mornings, my father would be reading the newspaper. So I think it was something holding him back. But so all our conversations were in Spanish. Everything was in Spanish, reading and writing. And when I left for the military, I would have to write in Spanish. So it was all Spanish at the house.
Did his shop have a name, or was it
just Villagomez? Yeah, they had a sign and business cards, and yeah, I still have some. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So speaking of your parents, what would you say are your favorite memories of your mother and your father?
When my father was working at the shop, he had the radio, and he had a little sitting area. And in the neighborhood, the old guys would come and hang out and swap stories. And I would love to listen to the old timers. It was right on 75th Street, so by the turning basin, you know where that is. So a lot of seamen would come in and leave their shoes and have them fixed. And they would trade stories about their life on the ships. And of course, you can see some of the ships from there. The tall, I forgot what you call them, from the ships. And listening to them tell stories and listening to my father and his brother, Uncle Ralph, would come in, and he was one of the story swappers. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to those stories.
So these were all Mexicanos?
Yes. No, he had a lot of customers that were black. And at that time it was, I don't know, it was something very different. And black people would bring their shoes in there, men, to be fixed. And never had a problem with it. And he would, sometimes I think it would get past him and he'd say a few words in English. Like, what do I say? But he was like that. He had a great sense of humor. Great sense of humor. And but most of them were all Mexicanos. Everybody spoke Spanish. Nobody spoke anything but Spanish except for the black customers that came. And my mother, because we had a large family, was at home. She tended the house. My mother was more like the driver, you know. And my father was happy to let her do that. Yeah.
Did your dad have, so I guess you were the employees, did he have any actual, like, an assistant or anything like that?
No, it was just us. Just family. We had a big family, so sometimes when his boys, he would use cousins or nephews, other guys to help.
How long did the shop exist?
Oh, my guess it's 20 years, something like that. Toward the end, the business got slow, and particularly in the shoe repair business, it's the economy is tight in. When the economy's bad, and I think during the war they were rationing, things like that creates more of its business. But toward the end, when the economy, people just buy other shoes, they wouldn't repair their ones. So I think that affected it.
So what year did it start? Did you say?
Oh, probably a little after the war, in the late 40s to late 60s. Now, he used to do it part-time while he was still working. And gradually, as the demand expanded, he closed it down, opened a little shop. That was the third house, I forgot. Eventually, he fixed it up and made it another little rent house. So that was the third one. I was trying to remember. One above the garage, my grandmother's, and then the shop. Now, this was way late. Now, he died pretty early, young. He was 67 for me. Yeah.
Do you remember, was there like an official opening of the business?
No, that happened way before me.
So,
When I came along, I was born in '43, so
oh,
yeah, I was
you were
pretty
very
old.
little.
I'm way straggler in the family. If you've seen the pictures, everybody's grown up, and I'm the sprinkler. Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've regretted, could I used to think when I was in the Navy, and I thought when I get out, I'm going to go hang around with my dad. I'm going to go and so we're going to sit down and drink a beer and we're going to talk and be friends. But not after I got out, he died. And that was shocking to me. It just blew me away.
So, with the shop and everything, was there time for any family trips, or did you guys do anything together, like take a vacation or go on trips?
Well, we did. My father, this was I'm toward the end of the game, right? He would always tell my mom, "We're here temporary. We're going back to Mexico." Right? That was his plan. And when I came along, by that time, my mother knew it was not going to happen, right? She would just kind of think at it and say, yeah, we're going to move. But they took us to Morelia, and they showed us the cathedral where they were born. And she said, I want you to see where we came from. Okay, so we toured the city of Morelia, and she showed us around. Another time we went to visit, my mother's side of the family went to Mexico City. When my mother came with the Villagomez, my mother's a Ledesma, and her part of the family also fled, and they went to Mexico City. So she has a lot of family in Mexico City. So she would go visit her aunts and sisters, stepsisters, and stepbrothers in Mexico City. So we would go spend time in Mexico City visiting mi tia Locha, mi tia Chucha, mi tia Carmela, mi tio Vicente, the whole gang. So we would go to Mexico City, but that one time she wanted us to see Morelia, and we did. It was good.
Do you know why your father wanted to go back?
I don't know. He used to tell me about how beautiful it was. He used to describe the hills and the rivers and how beautiful it was. And Rio Lerma. And he was a good storyteller, and he would paint such a great picture of how beautiful everything was. And in Houston, it was all industry, and he had kind of maybe a fairy tale, but he always wanted to go back. Yeah.
And so, did they ever talk about, I'm trying to get the dates right, so they moved here.
1918.
Did they ever talk about what that was like to flee? I mean, was there any
Very little.
fear or?
Very little. My mother, I don't know. I have different stories from my older sisters about how they came. My mother said she remembered crossing the river, and my sisters say no, they came on the train all the way to Laredo. So I don't know what that was like. My mother used to like to tell stories about when they were working in Saratoga, which was a lumbering country, and there were big snakes out there. And she would say, unas serpientes, and describe these huge snakes that were out in the forest. She was not a forest person. That's the only thing that I remember her saying, the huge snakes out there.
Did they ever talk politics? Were they very political?
No, not that I know of. No, they're very liberal-minded, very liberal. They were not conservative at all. But they never actually spoke of it. When my dad was going up for his get his citizenship, because they were here legal aliens and they had to register every so often, he was going up, and I remember him rehearsing for his interview, and he kept saying, he had trouble saying Eisenhower. I remember that. And he would say Eisenhower, Eisenhower. But that's the only thing I heard. He was rehearsing for his interview, which they passed. Yeah. I think they were checking his how long he'd been a resident. And there were some documents that he had to show that he had, in fact, been here during all those years. I don't remember which document that was, but he had some document that clearly showed that he had been here for that length of time.
So, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I never gave it much thought, really. I just wanted to travel. That's all. I wanted to go. I wanted to see the Pacific Ocean. That was my big motivator. Right.
Do you still have anything from your childhood? Any memorabilia or anything from your parents or grandparents?
Yes, I have some. I collected some. I have a little cotton bale from my father, 19 years of service. And when my Uncle Ralph died, I went and collected things because my father always spoke fondly of his brother Ralph, who never had children. And there were some pictures of Uncle Ralph in the Army and things like that. So I collected mainly the Uncle Ralph memories. Yeah, my father really liked Uncle Ralph. That's all right. A few little trophies and things when I grow up, I was, are you from Magnolia? You're not from Magnolia?
What's your second word here?
Oh, okay. Because I was a member of the Magnolia Y. I spent a lot of time with the Magnolia Y. So I have a few trophies and little dinky things like that.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add about your own memories or your family history?
No, not too much. I'm surprised how little Magnolia has changed. My old neighborhood, it looks just the way it was when I left. Nothing. I go to other areas and I can see change. But Magnolia stays the same. Sometimes I take my kids through there, but they're not interested in it. Well, I kid myself, and my wife is from Singapore, no, I'm very happy. I have a big family, and we're all settled in.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope I didn't go too far.
No, that was